All right, so some problems that you guys need to do, especially in your college math class, given one trig statement, you need to be able to find all 6, so the 5 others. The biggest thing with this first is, what are all 6 trigonometric functions? We have our OG functions, sine, cosine, and tangent. The inverse functions are, if we remember, we have cosecant is the inverse of sine, secant is the inverse of cosine, cotangent is the inverse of tangent. Stop it. So we've already given you one of these. We know that the cosine is the square root of 5 over 5, and so we can automatically get the secant. We know it's the opposite, so we can just flip it and put 5 over the square root of 5. Now we know later we're going to need to rationalize that denominator because you cannot leave square roots and the denominator of a trig function. We'll do that all at the very end. So now we need the other information to get the 4 others. Based on this, we should be able to draw a reference triangle to help us out. So I'm just going to draw a random right triangle, and then I'm just going to pick one of these. It doesn't matter which one you pick, and I'm going to make it theta. And now based on where I picked theta, I should be able to label my triangle over here based on the square root of 5 over 5. If you remember, sorry, that's an O, TOA, when you're given cosine, you know the adjacent over the hypotenuse. So my adjacent side over the hypotenuse, we automatically can label. And this should be enough information to now get the third side using the Pythagorean theorem. And we're back. So we now just did Pythagorean theorem and reduced the radical to get 2 on the square root of 5. We originally got the square root of 20, but then we reduced it nicely because we're really smart. Now we have enough information to get the rest of our trig functions. We know the sine is opposite over hypotenuse, so opposite over hypotenuse. And the cosecant is just the opposite of sine. 5 over 2 on the square root of 5. Tangent is opposite over adjacent, 2 on the square root of 5 divided by the square root of 5. And right here, guys, what's the square root of 5 divided by the square root of 5? Cancels. So the tangent here is actually just 2. And when I flip that, we can always pretend that's like over 1, so the cotangent is going to be 1/2. Hey, 5th period, here we go. So, if you notice, all of these answers are totally fine because they don't have a square root in the denominator. But the cosecant and secant, we need to rationalize. So I went ahead and wrote those over here, and we can make it happen. When you rationalize the denominator, we're going to take whatever radical, whatever square root we want to get rid of, and we're going to multiply by that radical divided by itself. So my numerator will become 5 times the square root of 5. Now down here, the square root of 5 times the square root of 5 is the square root of 25, which is just 5, times 2 is 10. 5 over 10 reduces to 1 over 2 as a fraction, so your actual answer for cosecant is square root of 5 over 2. Over here, we're going to multiply by the square root of 5 or the square root of 5. We'll get 5 times the square root of 5. The square root of 5 times the square root of 5 is the square root of 25, which is just 5. 5 divided by 5 cancels out. So your secant is just the square root of 5, actually.